What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with Tech Daily, and in this video, we're going to be unboxing the brand new Samsung Galaxy A11. This phone was actually announced a couple of weeks ago, and unlike a few of the other A-series devices I've covered on the channel already, this one will be launched in the US this summer, and is actually the second cheapest A-series phone in the lineup. It's of course the successor to the A10 from last year, which, fun fact, the A10 was actually the best-selling Android phone worldwide for 2019. I found that really surprising. And the A11 is also an upgrade for folks who have the more recent A10s and the A10e as well. So if you've been waiting for something new, this might be the phone for you. As far as pricing and availability, because this phone is so new right now, there's not a ton of information yet. I picked up this phone for around $180, and I believe that's what the phone will be unlocked. Looking ahead though, this is a device that will likely be sold through a handful of US carriers, so you may be able to get it even cheaper than that if you opt for a prepaid plan or sign a service contract. Either way, if you are interested in doing some comparison shopping of your own, or maybe you want to buy this phone for yourself, I'll have some links down below in the video description to where you can get this device at its cheapest price. So check down there so you don't miss out. Okay, enough talking, let's go ahead and unbox this thing. And just as a side note, I really do like the A-series box and packaging. I know it's not important, but the wallpapers Samsung chooses for these phones are always so cool, and I like how the box design is consistent for every single A-series phone. So sliding off the cover here, the first thing we see is a little extra packet right on top. Inside here, there's just a couple pieces of paper and instructions. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like this phone ships with a clear case like some of the other A-series devices do, which is kind of a shame. Digging a little deeper inside the box, you also get a standard 15-watt Samsung USB wall plug for charging, a USB-A to USB-C cable, and a pair of earbuds. Unfortunately, these aren't the greatest earbuds in the world, but it is at least nice to have them thrown in there. With all that stuff out of the way, here is the Samsung Galaxy A11. Now, right off the bat, if you're coming from any other A10 phone from last year that I mentioned, you'll notice some design changes and extra features already. The A11 is a pretty good-sized 6.4-inch phone, so a little bigger than before. Across the front, you'll see that the most obvious difference is the placement of the camera cutout. Rather than a center teardrop notch like before, Samsung went with an off-center Infinity O cutout. And I actually think this is an interesting move. I didn't necessarily have a problem with the teardrop notch, and I guess the next logical thing would have been a center camera cutout like the other A-series phones. But Samsung decided to move it off to the left for whatever reason, and I think this at least allows for some interesting wallpaper choices in an attempt to hide it, which is fun. And fortunately, it's not in the way, obviously, it's just a little bit of a weird decision. Physically, since this is a budget device, you've got a budget build with an all-plastic construction rear housing and plastic frame. I actually don't mind this, and honestly, it looks and feels pretty good, all things considered. The glossy finish looks nice, the materials don't feel cheap, and while you don't get the premium materials, I have no complaints here. There are two compromises with the build though. This phone does not have any sort of IP or water resistance rating at all, and there's no wireless charging either, so keep those things in mind. And just as a side note, this phone right now comes in black, white, red, or blue, so a nice selection of colors to choose from as well. Taking a look around, everything else is about where you'd expect. On the right side, you'll find the volume switch and power button. You've got a slim earpiece up top for phone calls that's pretty hidden, and a noticeable bottom bezel down below, which, while not great looking, it's something to sort of expect with a phone at this price point. Down below, you'll find the USB-C charging port and a single downward firing speaker. And around back, you'll see that we have a new triple lens camera setup for this phone, which I will talk about in just a minute. Below that, you also have a physical rear-mounted fingerprint reader. And just playing around with this, it feels and functions like any other Samsung fingerprint sensor on the budget phones. I like the placement here. It's still comfortable, even with a slight bump up in phone size, and it's fast and accurate enough as well. On a phone like this, I think it's important to keep things simple and easy, and holding on to that rear fingerprint scanner is a good choice. Of course, you also do have the option to pair this with Face Unlock, so multiple options to choose from in getting into the phone. In regards to the screen, while things did get a little bigger, like I said, the A11 doesn't get any huge upgrades here. You're still dealing with a TFT display, which is sort of Samsung's version of an LCD LCD panel. It comes in at a resolution of 1560 by 720, a 19.5 by 9 aspect ratio, and packing in around 268 pixels per inch. Now, I will say that while Samsung's higher end phones have surprisingly good AMOLED screens, you have to keep your expectations in check here with what's on the A11. Since it's truly a budget phone, it's not going to compare with those pricier devices with the better, nicer displays. And what you get here instead is genuinely a budget screen. But fortunately, I still think things look pretty good. Viewing angles aren't too bad, all things considered. And I think you've still got some good color and contrast. With only a 720p resolution, you do lose a little bit in detail, and the pixels are something you can pick out with the naked eye. But all in all, for under $200, this is still a good screen for most occasions. And getting something of this size is pretty nice too. You can do a lot with 6.4 inches. Videos and games and web browsing are all very immersive, and I think in the world of big smartphones, this phone fits right in while still keeping that cost pretty low. Inside, the Samsung Galaxy A11 packs the 1.8 GHz octa-core Snapdragon 450 processor, paired with the Adreno 506 GPU and either 2GB or 3GB of RAM. Just like all the rest of Samsung's 2020 phones, this device also ships with Android 10 out of the box, which is great to see. And while I don't necessarily think the specs here are a huge upgrade over last year's A10 phones, I think there's still a couple of things to be happy about. The user experience is smooth, at least right out of the box, and I think Android 10 offers this device a refreshed feel and snappier overall experience. Again, you have to understand that this is a budget device, so you won't be pushing the boundaries on performance by any means. But for web browsing and content consumption, you've got a solid phone for sure. For gaming, I think I want to do a little more testing, but there's at least some potential here. You certainly won't be running something like PUBG Mobile at max settings, but for the casual gamer, someone who just enjoys the simple apps, this phone will do just fine. Keep in mind, this just isn't a powerhouse device. This is for someone who mainly just needs a phone that you can do a little bit of everything with, and what you get here is exactly that. Also, inside, the A11 ships with 32GB of internal storage, but if you want even more than that, you can utilize the SD card slot and add significantly more storage, up to 512GB, which is really nice. One big advantage this phone has, I think, is actually the battery life. With a 4000 mAh capacity battery paired with the budget-friendly display and specs, this is a device that can potentially last up to 2 days on a single charge. And I think that's important and certainly something worth considering. If you're coming from an A10s, you already know how good the battery life was on that phone with the same capacity. And if you have the regular A10 and A10e, you can expect a nice upgrade here with this phone. All in all, if you're just looking for a device in general that you know will last, the A11 is going to be your choice. And like I said earlier, this phone charges via the 15-watt charger included in the box. No other fast charging options here and no wireless charging either, but it's still good enough in my opinion. In regards to the cameras, once again, we're seeing Samsung focus on this with their budget phones. Depending on which device you're coming from, you'll get more or less of an upgrade, but either way, the A11 packs a new triple lens setup, and this includes the 13 megapixel f1.8 aperture main lens, a 5 megapixel ultra wide lens, and a 2 megapixel depth sensor. The depth sensing lens is something we saw jumping to the A10s, which is super helpful with those shallow depth of field portrait shots. But the new lens here is the ultra wide angle. I honestly think this is a great addition, and it sort of finishes out a near perfect camera setup for a device like this. Coupled with some extra shooting modes, even a pro mode thrown in with some extra manual controls, this phone offers a surprisingly good camera setup for a device at this price point, and I'm excited to put it to the test and see what it's capable of. Up front, the selfie camera appears to be the same 8 megapixel f2.0 aperture shooter from the A10s as well, but again, if you're coming from one of those other A-series phones, you'll be getting an upgrade. So all in all, I think the A11 is a pretty interesting device. It obviously falls on the lower end of Samsung's A-series lineup, and it's certainly geared towards people who just want a simple and reliable phone to get the simple things done throughout the day. That's exactly what you're getting here. And if you're coming from an A10 or A10e, it's actually a nice upgrade with a bigger battery, better cameras, and increased screen size as well. It's a little harder to justify coming from the A10s, I think, but if you want a fresh, new device anyway, the A11 is your answer. So there you go, that's just my quick unboxing and first impressions of the new Samsung Galaxy A11. I'm excited to put this phone to the test, compare it to some other devices, and really see what it's all about in some future videos. If I happen to miss anything, or if you have any questions about the phone, definitely let me know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to follow Tech Daily on Twitter and subscribe to the Tech Daily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.